The palace had prepared the country for a major royal announcement, but almost nobody expected the woman who appeared before the cameras. Princess Catherine stepped forward alone, looked directly into the lens, and delivered her first official state address with a composure that instantly changed the atmosphere surrounding the monarchy. Yet it was not merely her presence that stunned viewers. It was the unmistakable message beneath her carefully chosen words. Her royal role had just entered an entirely different chapter. Before we explore what this could mean for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss a single update. Catherine felt the weight of the moment before a single word was spoken. Moments earlier, she had placed both hands flat on the desk, closed her eyes, and quietly told an aide, "I'm ready." The fear had not disappeared. She had simply decided it would not control her. Her state address, an official speech delivered on behalf of national royal duty, was unprecedented because she was speaking directly to Britain and the Commonwealth without another senior royal standing beside her. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Catherine announced that she had accepted expanded responsibilities on behalf of the crown, taking on a greater role in representing continuity, public service, and selected senior engagements during a period of transition. She did not describe herself merely as Prince William's support. Instead, she pledged to serve the crown directly wherever duty required her presence, and the distinction was impossible to miss. Prince William listened to those words from a private adjoining room, where pride and concern collided. When his wife reached the phrase, "the responsibility that this moment requires," the prince lowered his eyes that he understood what the public could not. Every new responsibility meant another sacrifice of privacy, another demand on family life, and another expectation that Catherine would have to carry. Yet he also knew she had chosen those words deliberately, making his silence all the more meaningful. King Charles had shaped that message only hours earlier. The king approved the final wording and reportedly altered one key phrase, replacing "supporting the institution" with "carrying responsibility for the institution." In simple terms, the institution meant the monarchy itself, its duties, continuity, and public role. Those words moved Catherine beyond the language of assistance and toward the language of direct responsibility. Queen Camilla understood the significance as clearly as William did. While the public heard reassurance, those closest to the crown heard something more profound. The queen consort knew this was not simply Catherine speaking well. She was being trusted in a different way. The real shock was not that she had spoken, but that everyone closest to the crown already understood why she had been chosen to speak. What had happened behind closed doors before the world heard her historic address? Behind Catherine's composed voice stood four people carrying four very different interpretations of the same moment. Prince William saw the woman he loved stepping into history. King Charles saw the future of the monarchy becoming visible before his eyes. Queen Camilla saw the balance of attention shifting in a way that was impossible to ignore. And Princess Catherine understood that once the address ended, she could never again be viewed merely as the supportive royal figure standing one step behind. William had recognized that reality even before the broadcast began. During a private conversation before Catherine took her place, he asked one simple question. Was she certain? She looked at him for a long moment before answering that certainty was impossible. Duty, however, could not always wait for certainty. The prince did not argue. He simply reached for her hand. His hesitation had never been about whether she was capable. It came from knowing exactly what greater responsibility would cost them both. Catherine carried that understanding with her. She remained William's closest partner, but something had clearly changed in the way her role was being defined. She was becoming an independent senior royal figure, whose decisions and words could carry influence beyond simply supporting her husband. That mattered because the future of the monarchy depended not only on succession, the order in which the crown eventually passes, but also on whether the public trusted those who would one day carry that responsibility. King Charles had been thinking about that question for some time. In several private conversations, the king had spoken with Princess Catherine about what he called visible continuity, the idea that the future of the monarchy must become familiar to the public before any formal transition makes it unavoidable. He was no longer thinking solely about Prince William eventually inheriting the crown. He was thinking about whether the next royal generation could already provide a sense of stability and confidence to the public. Queen Camilla perceived the shift from an entirely different perspective. When the finalized broadcast schedule reached her office, she noticed that Catherine had been given the most prominent evening slot. She read the schedule once, then again. Finally, the Queen Consort set the page down and asked with remarkable calm, "Was this always the plan?" No one in the room rushed to answer. That silence carried its own message. Prince William continued to struggle with the speed of events. He understood that every new appearance would bring greater scrutiny, harsher judgment, and less space for Catherine to simply be herself. Yet he also recognized that King Charles had begun entrusting her with something far more significant than ceremonial duties. The future king could shield her from some pressures, but not from the growing importance being placed upon her role. Catherine understood that as well. What the public witnessed during the address was not the beginning of her transformation. It was merely the moment when that transformation became visible. The true beginning had occurred weeks earlier during an unexpected royal engagement, one that few people anticipated would carry such significance. When those closest to Catherine later searched for the moment everything changed, they repeatedly returned to a single encounter that ended with King Charles making a decision in silence. Every royal turning point has a moment that appears ordinary until history gives it meaning. Catherine's address was no exception. Weeks before the cameras went live, a public engagement placed her in a situation that no carefully prepared briefing could control. There was no grand ceremony, no constitutional announcement, and no dramatic palace proclamation. There was only a grieving family, an unexpected conversation, and King Charles watching Catherine respond in a way he would never forget. Catherine arrived at the National Remembrance reception expecting nothing more than a brief series of greetings before joining the formal royal party. The reception brought together families carrying personal loss, while the wider event honored national service and sacrifice. That context mattered because King Charles had already been considering how much responsibility the younger generation should begin carrying whenever his own schedule needed to be reduced. He was paying closer attention than anyone realized. Then the timetable unexpectedly changed. A young widowed mother began speaking to Catherine about losing her husband. As the conversation continued, the woman struggled to find the strength to go on. The princess stopped moving. Instead of offering a brief word of sympathy and moving along, she remained by the woman's side. Ignoring subtle signals from aides, she allowed the conversation to unfold at the mother's own pace. Catherine did not rush the woman's grief. Gradually, the mother regained her composure. Prince William noticed the delay and felt concern before he felt pride. He knew how easily an emotional and unpredictable moment could become overwhelming or be misunderstood by the public. Yet as he watched Catherine keep the focus entirely on the grieving mother, his concern began to fade. She was not performing compassion. She was simply refusing to leave someone alone in the middle of their pain. King Charles noticed the same thing from only a few feet away. Later, after the reception ended, the king closed the door to a private room and spoke with Prince William without aides present. He told his son that Catherine possessed something that no briefing, training session, or carefully planned strategy could manufacture. She inspired trust naturally, and trust, he believed, was becoming one of the monarchy's most valuable assets. That realization mattered because public confidence could not be commanded by the crown. It had to be earned long before any future transition asked the country to accept significant change. That evening, King Charles moved from observation to action. He requested formal proposals for a direct national address, initially presenting the idea as a symbolic message of reassurance. Within days, however, the discussion expanded. The monarch wanted Princess Catherine to speak about continuity, duty, and service in a way that carried genuine responsibility behind the words, not merely ceremony. Prince William understood exactly where the idea had begun. Catherine had never asked for a larger platform, yet that reluctance to seek attention was becoming one of the very reasons King Charles trusted her with greater responsibility. The decision appeared nearly settled. Then one senior royal challenged the entire plan, forcing everyone to confront a question they had carefully avoided. Was Catherine still simply supporting the future king, or had she become influential enough to speak on behalf of the institution itself? Royal conflict rarely begins with raised voices. Instead, It begins with pauses that linger too long, questions asked too carefully, and the realization that everyone in the room understands what is truly being discussed. When plans for Catherine's state address reached their final stage, a private meeting exposed the tension hidden beneath the polished surface of palace life. What began as a discussion about protocol soon became something far more personal. A debate about relevance, visibility, and the future of the monarchy. Queen Camilla looked directly at Catherine and refused to soften the question. Did she understand how a standalone address would be interpreted once the public saw her speaking without Prince William beside her? The Queen Consort was not questioning whether Catherine could deliver the speech. She was challenging the precedent it might establish. In royal life, precedent matters because today's exception can become tomorrow's expectation. Once Catherine occupied that space alone, the significance of the moment could not easily be reduced. Catherine did not retreat. "I understand exactly how it will be interpreted," she replied. "That is why I cannot treat it lightly." Her answer changed the atmosphere in the room because she did not deny the importance of what was happening. She accepted it. For King Charles, that response mattered deeply. This was no longer simply about one successful broadcast. It was about whether the monarchy could begin presenting its future structure to the public without making that future appear forced or artificial. Prince William sensed the tension increasing and leaned forward in his chair. He was prepared to intervene, but Catherine raised a hand slightly toward him. She wanted no protection in that moment. If her evolving role carried independent responsibility, then she believed she should defend that responsibility independently as well. William stopped, watched her carefully, and recognized that the woman beside him was already responding differently under pressure. Queen Camilla pressed her point further. She argued that the crown depended upon hierarchy as much as public affection, and that popularity should never quietly evolve into constitutional expectation. In this context, hierarchy meant the established order of royal rank and responsibility that prevents personal appeal from replacing formal authority. Her concern was clear. Admiration could become expectation, and expectation could eventually influence the balance of power. Finally, King Charles brought the discussion to an end. The king placed his pen on the table and announced that the broadcast would proceed exactly as planned. There would be no compromise, no diluted language, no revisions designed to lessen its significance. His decision made one thing unmistakably clear. Catherine's expanded role was not emerging because of headlines, public popularity, or circumstance. It was being deliberately authorized from within the crown itself. Prince William said little afterward, but his silence carried an even larger question. King Charles could approve the moment. He could open the door. But one day, the future king would have to decide whether Catherine's authority remained a temporary response to a particular moment, or became a permanent feature of their future reign. And once that decision belonged to William, the balance within the royal household could shift once again. The most consequential royal decisions are often made without cameras, applause, or witnesses. After the confrontation, Prince William faced a choice that was both deeply personal and symbolically constitutional. He could allow Catherine's address to remain a singular moment approved by his father, or he could treat it as something much larger. A declaration of how he intended to share responsibility when his own time came to lead. William understood what was truly at stake. The monarchy he might one day inherit would depend not only on confidence in the sovereign, but also on trust in the partnership surrounding that sovereign. A royal household, in simple terms, is the working structure of staff, duties, and responsibilities built around senior members of the royal family. If Catherine was destined to stand beside him in the years ahead, her authority could not always remain hidden behind his position. Catherine sensed his hesitation before he fully explained it. Later, when they were alone, the prince admitted that part of him still wanted to protect her from becoming indispensable. He understood what often happens to those who become essential to the crown. Their time no longer belongs entirely to them. Their private lives become increasingly public, and their sense of duty gradually begins to outweigh personal freedom. That was the future William feared for the woman he loved, even as he recognized that it might also be the future she was choosing for herself. Their private life grew smaller. Every absence was questioned, every decision examined, and every moment of weakness carried public significance. Then Catherine responded with the same clarity that had already unsettled the room earlier. "Avoiding responsibility," she told Prince William, "will not give us our privacy back. Instead," she argued, "it would simply allow fear to decide what they were willing to become." William studied her for several moments before replying. He did not rush his answer. Then quietly he said, "Then we do this together." That sentence changed more than the mood of the conversation. Prince William subsequently authorized his household to begin treating Catherine as an independent principal for selected major engagements. An independent principal is a senior royal whose duties can be planned and carried out in their own right rather than automatically being attached to another royal's schedule. For Catherine, it was a subtle administrative adjustment with enormous symbolic significance. William also made one specific request regarding the state address. He wanted her voice preserved. The prince rejected phrases that sounded overly ceremonial and removed language that made Catherine appear distant from ordinary people. He wanted her to speak about endurance, family, responsibility, and service in words that felt authentic, not like language carefully crafted merely to withstand criticism. Catherine understood why that mattered. If the public was going to trust the speech, it needed to feel genuine rather than manufactured. Once the final wording reached senior staff, the machinery of the palace began adapting to that new reality. The change was immediate. Invitations, briefings, and major decisions started reaching Catherine's office in a different order than before. Some doors were opening more quickly, while other offices were beginning to notice the shift. A broadcast may last only a few minutes. Its consequences begin almost immediately. Before Catherine had even left the room, phones were vibrating across royal offices. Diplomatic departments requested transcripts, while staff members tried to determine whether they had witnessed a ceremonial gesture or the beginning of a lasting redistribution of royal influence. Inside the palace, however, one reaction spoke louder than any official briefing. Catherine's words were already moving faster than anyone expected. Her promise to carry greater responsibility was interpreted as confirmation that her office would now play a larger role in major national and Commonwealth engagements. Commonwealth engagements are official duties connected to nations that share historic ties through the Commonwealth, giving them considerable symbolic importance within the monarchy. Within minutes, selected briefing papers began moving directly to her team, instead of waiting for Prince William's schedule. Queen Camilla felt the change in a particularly personal way. After watching the address, she returned to her private sitting room expecting a moment of quiet reflection. Instead, an aide arrived carrying an updated engagement file. A forthcoming national service initiative listed Catherine first. The Queen Consort read the page once. Then she read it again. She removed her glasses but said nothing. That silence revealed more than anger ever could, because the new arrangement was no longer theoretical. It was appearing in official schedules. Catherine, meanwhile, felt something entirely different. Rather than celebrating, she turned to William and asked a surprisingly simple question. "Did I sound too certain?" The question caught the prince off guard. The woman now being described as a symbol of stability was privately questioning every sentence she had just delivered. William reminded her that certainty had never been the goal. She had been asked to sound responsible, not invulnerable. That distinction mattered because the public responded not only to her authority, but also to her humanity. Before public reaction grew louder, King Charles sent a handwritten message. The note contained only a few lines. He told Catherine that authority is strongest when the person carrying it remembers whom that authority exists to serve. She read the message twice. For her, those words carried more weight than any headline because they confirmed that the responsibility entrusted to her was never intended as personal elevation. It was intended as service. Soon afterward, Prince William received another surprise. International broadcasters were already describing Catherine not simply as the Princess of Wales, but as the clearest symbol of the monarchy's next era. The future king understood both the opportunity and the risk contained within that description. Public confidence can strengthen the crown. It can also create expectations that become difficult to manage. Catherine had little time to process any of it. Before the headlines fully reached her, King Charles requested a private meeting away from advisors, schedules, and strategic discussions. The king was preparing to explain why he had placed her before the nation in the first place. After all the planning, protocol, and tension, the true turning point arrived without an audience. King Charles and Princess Catherine met alone. There were no aides taking notes, no advisors shaping the conversation. Only a king, a future queen, and a discussion that could help define the monarchy's next chapter. For the first time that evening, there was nothing ceremonial standing between King Charles and Princess Catherine. The king was no longer speaking to a royal colleague preparing for an engagement. He was speaking to the woman who might one day stand beside his son when the full weight of the crown becomes theirs to carry. Charles did not begin with praise. Instead, he explained that the address had never been designed merely to reassure the country for a single evening. His goal was to help the public become familiar with continuity before change became unavoidable. In this context, continuity meant allowing people to recognize and trust the next generation of royal leadership before succession eventually places that generation fully at the forefront. For King Charles, that trust could never be manufactured at the last moment. It had to be built gradually. Catherine listened carefully before admitting what had troubled her since the speech ended. She feared the address might appear presumptuous, as though she had stepped into a role that was not yet hers to occupy. Charles responded without hesitation. Her reluctance, he explained, was precisely what had convinced him she was ready. People who actively seek authority often underestimate its cost. Those who understand its weight are usually the ones most likely to carry it responsibly. The conversation then became more personal. The king acknowledged the sacrifices that Catherine and Prince William had already made in service to the monarchy. Privacy, ordinary family moments, and the freedom to make mistakes without immediate public judgment. He knew his son had spent years trying to shield his wife from those pressures. He also knew that Catherine had repeatedly accepted those responsibilities despite the personal cost. For perhaps the first time, those sacrifices were being openly recognized rather than quietly expected. The moment affected her deeply, yet she remained silent and listened. Then came the confirmation she had not fully anticipated. King Charles told her that the address represented a genuine turning point. In the future, Catherine would continue receiving selected responsibilities in her own right rather than solely through Prince William's position. The decision was not intended to separate them. Quite the opposite. It was designed to prepare them to carry future responsibilities as two individuals trusted both independently and together. Finally, Catherine asked a simple question. "What do you expect from me?" The king's answer was far simpler than any formal briefing. He told her that the crown did not need another imitation of someone who had come before, that it needed her, that he wanted her to remain recognizable as herself, especially when the pressure became greatest, because that authenticity was what people had already begun to trust. When Catherine left the meeting, she no longer doubted what the palace intended. The institution had made its decision. What it could not decide was how the public would respond. As midnight approached, the private meaning of her address collided with public reaction, creating an image that would come to define the entire evening. By the time the broadcast ended, the story no longer belonged solely to Buckingham Palace. It belonged to television studios, newspaper editors, crowds gathered behind barriers, and millions of viewers replaying the same words while searching for clues about the future. Amid countless headlines and endless commentary, one simple moment captured the emotional impact of the evening better than any expert analysis. Outside the palace, strangers applauded a woman who could not hear them. Prince William witnessed part of the reaction alongside Catherine, and the scale of it quickly became overwhelming. Broadcasters across Britain launched extended discussions about the significance of her speaking alone in a state-style address, a formal national message carrying the weight of royal authority. Commentators began describing the moment as evidence that the next generation of the monarchy was no longer waiting quietly in the background. William listened until the discussion shifted toward the sacrifices his wife had made. Then he quietly lowered the volume. Catherine noticed. She did not ask him to turn it back up. By then, messages were already arriving from people thanking her for speaking about endurance, responsibility, and service. Some shared stories of personal hardship. Others spoke of loss, resilience, and hope. With every message she read, Catherine grew quieter. The reaction was no longer about royal approval or public relations. People were connecting their own experiences of grief, fear, and determination to something she had said. Outside Buckingham Palace, the response continued to grow. A small evening crowd gathered behind the barriers as more people arrived following the broadcast. One woman held up a handwritten sign bearing 5 simple words. "Thank you, Catherine. We heard you." As the palace lights glowed beyond the gates, applause began unexpectedly. The sound spread through the crowd until complete strangers were clapping together for someone who could not hear them. An aide later informed Prince William about the moment. He looked toward Catherine, but did not immediately tell her. He understood why it mattered. Public affection had always surrounded members of the royal family. This felt different. The reaction had not formed around celebration, glamour, or ceremony. It had formed around responsibility, service, and trust. And for William, Catherine, and King Charles, that distinction may have been the most significant message of the entire night. The future king understood that this kind of trust could strengthen the crown, but he also knew it could place an enormous burden on the person receiving it. Soon afterward, Catherine reviewed the next morning's newspaper headlines. One publication featured her photograph beneath the headline, "Her Moment." Another declared, "The future speaks." She looked at them without smiling. The applause had been overwhelming. The headlines were historic. Yet neither could provide the final verdict. That judgment would come only after the excitement faded and the realities of responsibility remained why then. One truth would be impossible to ignore. Catherine had entered that room as a senior royal and emerged carrying something far greater. History does not always announce itself through a crown, a throne, or a constitutional ceremony. Sometimes it arrives through a voice steady enough to carry uncertainty for everyone listening. Catherine's first official state address mattered, because it revealed something the monarchy had spent years preparing, but had never expressed so clearly. The next chapter of royal life would not be built around Prince William alone. Princess Catherine had become part of the institution's emotional center, and everyone involved now understood it. Later, after the noise and attention had finally begun to fade, Catherine returned to William. The prince looked at her differently, not because she had changed overnight, but because the world had finally seen what he had known privately for years. She had delivered a national message without standing behind his position. That distinction mattered because a future queen is not merely a title beside a king. It is a public role capable of strengthening confidence in the crown when uncertainty threatens to weaken it. Then William asked the simplest question of the entire evening. "How do you feel?" Catherine paused. She allowed the tension to leave her shoulders before answering. "Tired but certain." For the first time all night, they both laughed. It was a small moment, almost painfully ordinary. Yet that was precisely why it mattered. Behind the authority, expectation, and historic language were two people realizing that the future they had discussed privately was no longer a distant possibility. It was approaching. The following morning, King Charles experienced a quieter reaction. When he received his briefing and saw Catherine's photograph dominating the front pages, he did not celebrate the headlines. Instead, he paused, studied the page, and reportedly remarked to an aide, "She carried it well." His response revealed the purpose behind everything. Continuity. The gradual transfer of public trust from one royal generation to the next had stopped being an abstract concept. It had become visible. Queen Camilla recognized that the balance had shifted as well. She understood that Catherine had not replaced anyone. Yet a new and unmistakable center of public confidence now existed within the monarchy. Every office, schedule, and future decision would have to acknowledge that reality. She could question the speed of the change. She could no longer question whether the change had occurred. Catherine's greatest achievement, however, was not the authority she appeared to gain. It was the way she carried it. She never presented herself as more powerful than before. Instead, she made duty appear heavier, sacrifice more meaningful, and service more important than status. The speech had begun with uncertainty. It ended with clarity. King Charles chose continuity. Prince William chose partnership. Princess Catherine chose responsibility. And when she stepped away from that historic address, the monarchy had not simply introduced a stronger Princess of Wales. It had revealed the woman it believed could help carry its future. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more updates. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.